Suicide Squad is out now in cinemas and on streaming if you live in that America. And I'm here with my good old chum Duncan Casey to do a newer-side squad, reviewer-side squad of the Suicide Squad, James the Guns and the Suicide Squad. The kind of sequel but kind of soft reboot to David Ayer's Suicide Squad, which is widely regarded as a sort of dismal failure, glomming onto James Gunn's success with Guardians of the Galaxy, which is what the first one tried to do. And in actual fact, this was made because James Gunn was temporarily fired from Marvel a few years ago, which led us to where we are now after this kind of elongated cycle. We've both just seen it. I saw it yesterday. It's my first trip to the cinema for quite some time, which was quite fun. There were 6 people in the screening, which appears to reflect the weekend's take for the Suicide Squad, sadly. But that is that. We have a difference of opinion, which is nice, because we don't usually do that. We can be sort of like Siskel and Ebert, but, not dead. Duncan, what did you think of James the Guns and the Suicide Squad?
A Skewer-side squad.
A Skewer-side squad.
Yes, I also saw it yesterday, and I was look. Put it this way, I liked it. Didn't love it. Put it that way. I thought, firstly, the positive. It's visually arresting. I thought it was visually cohesive and. I would say that competently edited, competently put together, way more than Suicide Squad. And Suicide Squad was an actually sort of cohesive thing. I did like the visual aspect of it. I thought it was, for the most part, very well acted. And it was funny. There was levity. It was funny. I don't think that helped with the storytelling. I think that's where my main beef lies, is in the storytelling. I don't feel that it was a cohesively enough told story, but there are reasons for that we'll go into, that I think I would say a good 70% of them stem from the source material. I think there's a fundamental problem with the source material that really hamstrings you when you're trying to make this film in particular, but a film of this type. But I genuinely, it was funny, and it was, it felt like, at least it felt like the director's vision was on screen this time. At least it felt like, he knew what he wanted to say, and he said it, and that it must be applauded for, because the huge, horrendous sort of sellotape together studio mess of the last one was unforgivable.
That was a travesty.
Yeah.
Regardless, I mean, it was a travesty. It was more or less like unreleasable, I think, as a film. Did you find this? Were you looking at your watch? Was that? Yes. Were you kind of halfway through thinking, when's this going to finish? Was that?
I did start to feel like, when is this fucking thing going to end? Can I swear?
Right.
I suppose I was going to swear. Fuck it.
Of course, don't say fuck or bugger.
I honestly, I did. I was getting to the point where I was like, when is this going to end? Because it had so many sort of like. It kept building to crescendos, I suppose. It wasn't necessarily so much. I mean, it is quite long. I think it's like 2 and a bit hours long, isn't it? 2:20, something like that. Is it really that long? I didn't check. I must say, I didn't check, which is not like me. I normally do check run times. Let me pull that up. Okay.
For our reference.
But more really than that, it just seemed to build. It didn't know. It kind of was like it was going. This will be the ending? No, hang on, wait. No, we can't make that the ending. And it just kept going and going and going. And still kind of had to decide. I mean, it still fell back on the trope of save the city from the big bad kaiju, basically. And they even say kaiju, but I did like that. I thought that was interestingly done and differently done.
And it's Starro. They did Starro. They went straight to the most kind of outrageously Silver Agey, silly looking one. Yes. You know what I mean? So it wasn't very much. You are right. It was the kind of save the city from the big monster thing, but instead of kind of doing it, it was all part of the colour and the humour of this film. It's a colourful villain for a start. I mean, literally, it's kind of highly saturated, but also it's a silly kind of Silver Agey thing to go in. That's who you have to have Polka Dot Man fighting. Yeah, like you go in on that. So, I for my part, as we kind of briefly touched on, I really, really liked it. I had a blast with it. I really enjoyed it. It's 2 hours 13, by the way, which is presumably probably about 10 minutes of credit. So I do think 2 hours is probably a bit too long. But I really enjoyed it. I found it very funny. I thought I'm not 100% in lockstep with James Gunn. I really like James Gunn. He comes from the Troma tradition, which is something that has a special place in my heart. I think, for example, like Super is a film that I don't give a lot of time. I just thought it was just kind of quite mean and nasty. Whereas I love the Guardians movies. I love Slither. I think he's done loads of really great stuff. I think something this film did, and there be spoilers here, is that I think they had some very clever marketing because it opens on a rug pull because they've marketed a team that basically all get killed immediately.
Will we do a plot? Should we like give you? I would say give your thoughts and then let's do a plot sort of walkthrough because I think that's probably the best way to start if that's good.
Sure, very fun, very funny, very James Gunny. Like you say, I think it's the antidote to the last film. Well, you didn't say that, but I think that's kind of what you were kind of talking around. Is in that it's a writer-director piece that they haven't messed with. They've actually, for once, hired someone and let them get on with it. And I think they tried to retool David Ayer's Suicide Squad into a James Gunn film because they saw Guardians of the Galaxy and they wanted that, and it was a huge mistake because it's not what was shot. Whereas this does all the things they tried to retroactively shoehorn into the last Suicide Squad film, but it's doing it naturally and effortlessly because it's an actual James Gunn film. Yeah. And yeah, I had loads of fun with it. I really like when they go in on doing it, like we're just going to do a crazy Silver Age thing, and that goes all the way from I can't remember the name of the Batman show with the Batman, the Brave and the Bold for children, doing a kind of balls out Silver Age thing for children, and this is doing the same thing for adults and throwing all the craziness, which I really appreciated and I enjoyed a lot. First movie back, so I think that probably coloured it a little bit. I thought the cast were fantastic. I think the interplay between certain cast members, I thought I really, really liked Idris Elba in this. It's kind of like hangdog, kind of worn down, pissed off bloke, and him and John Cena played brilliantly off each other as kind of petulant twats. I thought it was great. And I always love me some Peter Capaldi, and I was really excited to see Peter Capaldi in this. And he didn't do a lot, but it was great to see him.
Wasted, I would have said.
You think not enough of him? There wasn't really enough. There wasn't enough of him, was there?
Again, but maybe we ought to talk about characters as a full thing. But I just not enough to do. Clear what his function was, but not enough built up around it. But I guess we'll get into that. It's funny because from the first shot of the film, I knew it was an intelligent image because it starts on Michael Rooker's reflection in the puddle, doesn't it? And then it pans up to look at him, and I was like, that. I turned to my wife actually because we were both watching it, and I said that to me was a clear and cinematic talk for you're watching the opposite of this. Of the first one, of what came before, like you were looking in a reflection. Now we're looking at the real, quote unquote, real world of what what we
and
really want to see.
That opening scene is doing the same stuff from the first Suicide Squad as well. Yeah, in a highly clippy way.
Yeah, all the prison stuff. It jumps around a lot, doesn't it? There's these odd things where it just goes 8 minutes earlier.
And I like those. It does lots of. You can't really call them in-camera titles because they're not. They're fake in-camera. They're CGI. But I really liked that the kind of in-camera title
I like
work
that as
in
well. Again, visually, because it knows what story it's telling. It knows that this is a. I mean, this is a funny thing because it's coming out of this incredibly po-faced DCEU world, and in a weird way, it feels right for that. It feels like a kind of off-cut of that world that it sort of works, but. I think it's like you say, the opening stuff is a real rug pull. It's because we've had all the marketing, we've had all like the cast interviews, including people like Jai Courtney and Nathan Fillion, and, all those people.
And Michael Rooker in particular,
yes,
I think is the real one because Michael Rooker is a James Gunn staple.
Yeah,
and again, spoilers. Tune out now. Most people have watched it. I don't know, or not, as the box office receipt show. Putting basically what happens, everybody, is the whole Suicide Squad that we've had teed up for all the marketing are killed off immediately, including I've said shit things about Jai Courtney before, but one of the best things he ever did was Captain Boomerang. He's one of the highlights of that other movie. I think he's got real comedy chops. And they kill him straight away, which I was genuinely gutted about because I was like, oh no, I wanted more of that.
Me too. I was really disappointed with that.
But it's a big slap in the face, and having Michael Rooker in is the perfect bait and switch and also he's teed up as the audience surrogate character, and it's a little bit like The Hunt, a movie we both liked, because that has a very playful audience surrogate thing to begin with, and it gives you like 4 or 5 different audience surrogates, I think the marketing push on this has been really clever in that regard. Hasn't done them any favours, I guess, but
yeah, no, fair point. Yeah, no, because I mean, I did sort of wonder looking at all that, going, well, where do they fit? I thought it would be maybe a big thing at the end that all these people turned up, because I was like, well, they're probably not in all of it, but whatever. And it was completely the inverse. Things like that weasel character that is the lone survivor of the beach attack, which is hilarious.
I love that. Yeah,
there's lots of, like I say, there's lots of comedic set pieces that I loved in isolation, but I just didn't feel told the story. You know, it felt like this is a really funny thing to put together if you're just storyboarding an action sequence, but it felt sort of clunkily just put together like Lego, rather than feeling to me like a cohesive thing to tell a story. There's scenes in there that I think could have been either excised completely or cut down a lot. Which I know if you said that to the filmmakers, they go, no, because the point is I'm trying to say this with it, and I get that, but just in terms of a pacing, like an overall thing, there were times when I was just like, this is just ground to a halt.
Right.
And I, you know, after that sort of, because obviously we get that time jump back and forth thing with the opening, which is clever, I like it. But it does sort of stutter the film. You kind of get a false start, and then you start, you know, and it knows it, because that's when it starts putting the titles on screen.
When it did the because the opening is so fast.
Yes,
and I do appreciate when films don't fuck around, but the opening is so fast, but it was like suspiciously fast. Yeah. It was like, oh, hold on, because they were like at the beach already, and it all goes to shit straight away, which was hilarious. Like, because they all died in such.
Well, the weasel guy just jumps off the thing and drowns because he can't swim.
Did anybody check if he can swim?
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. And Nathan Fillion, detachable kid, he's just like, his arms come off. You think it's going to be really spectacular, but he's just sort of slapping them so they shoot him.
Yeah.
So Flula Borg, he's a German comedian who plays the javelin guy.
Yes.
Flula Borg, he's someone I'm a bit of a fan of. He's a really funny dude. I follow him on Instagram and stuff, and he got massively ripped for this movie. And I think this is part of why I got suckered by this, because he got massively in shape, and he's done loads and loads of press for the movie. He's talking about it constantly. So it looked like, because he's done a bunch of comedy movies, and it's just like, oh, he's going to be like, you know, big part of this. And the fact that he went was kind of like, oh, they've just fucked with us, right?
Yeah,
got it completely.
I mean, there's a lot of that post-irony kind of. There's a lot of the kind of like, did you just say, but I thought you, but no, but, it's, you know, there's that whole scene, the briefing scene where she's like, what's that? She's like, it's an overhead projector. You know, it's all this kind of stuff.
Oh, I kind of,
it's
like
funny.
that.
No, I love it in isolation, but it's. I mean, okay, look, this is so fundamentally, I think what's rotten at the core of this is trying to make a team of supervillains work as a compelling film.
This is when you was this going back to what you were referring to as the problem with the source material.
Yeah, and I wouldn't lay this at the feet of James Gunn necessarily, but I do think there's a problem with the screenplay. Amanda Waller, for example, is a character that is really, really interesting and compelling in the animated series, and I believe in the comics as well. I don't really know because I haven't read them, but certainly in the animated series, she was clearly shown to be kind of Batman's equal in terms of intellect. She was clever. She was a strategist. She was able to pull strings and be really smart. And that, you know, I don't think they did Suicide Squad in the animated series, but you know, they had similar things. You know, she would get together anti-superhero task forces and that kind of thing. And the problem with just having her thrown into a suicide, you know, that's the only place we know her from in this universe, is that she has to be badder than the bad guy. You know, she has to have more villainy going on behind her than the bad guys, because she has to kind of be the bad guy. And it's like, she doesn't have to be. You've kind of written it like that because that's how you think. You know, you feel like you've got to kind of somehow put a good streak in the bad guys and a bad streak in the good guys, kind of thing. And it's like, I don't think you have to do that. I think you can be clever with this and still keep the bad guys, and you know, because that just seems to be a thing that means you don't like anyone and you're not really rooting for anyone. And they did the same thing. I mean, it's funny because they did the same thing with Idris Elba and Will Smith. You know, it's like, my daughter, I do this for my daughter. You know, and it's kind of like, I mean, in this, it is at least has some degree of backstory in the first one.
What's good in this, though, is because in the first one it's like, yeah, I'm a bad sniper pimp, but I love my daughter. In this, it's shown to be horribly dysfunctional from the get-go, which I love. The scene with him and his daughter is really, really funny, and I just kind of think the way it's just done as just this horribly dysfunctional thing is great. Perhaps then he's less likable because of it.
And that's fine, but the thing is, it turns on a dime. Like there's that scene which is great, but then it is sort of like, I'd do anything for my daughter, and it's like, what? You just want to fuck up. I mean, I get it. You were sort of doing self-preservation, and you genuinely don't think you're a good father. Fine, but don't then sort of now I'll go and save the world for my daughter kind of thing. Because that it's difficult but then you have to put something like that into your characters. You can't have a team motivated purely by evil be who we follow and are supposed to root for, because it's like, well, it doesn't track, does it?
I think what works here, and I think what they've done, which, because the original Suicide Squad film, it's just like they're bad, except they live in the world and they don't want the world to die, so they're kind of good for a bit. What I liked in this was they really lean into the fact that they're kind of loser characters. You know what I mean? They're all kind of a bit tragic, and like the worst one, Peacemaker, is like the most pathetic one of all.
Yeah.
Mostly, even though he's probably the most capable and the strongest, but he has no self-awareness. He's just an idiot. He's just this kind of like narcissistic twat. Yeah. So like he's John Cena. He looks amazing, but the bit in the jungle when he walks out in his tighty whities, and it's just like, why are you in your pants?
Well, because they're all let asleep, and he obviously sleeps in his pants, so he's just got up, and it's hilarious. Yeah. It's just like this action man with a clearly like stuffed pants, like walking around with his big shiny gun. Oh no, but it's still shown to be hyper capable. I mean, again, it's a set piece, but I love when they storm the camp and they kill everyone, including a bloke with his knob out, which is just hilarious. And I loved all that, and then it all culminates in the fact that like actually these were all freedom fighters. They've killed all of them. I love as well
that's so good.
It's Cordo Maltese as well, which is a nice sort of.
Yes, that was nice. It's like a bit of DC deep cut. Yeah. The Cosmates backstory and stuff. I love, because John Cena's getting a Peacemaker series that James Gunn's involved in, which I'm totally fucking watching. Like, I don't know how you're going to watch it in this country, but I'm down.
Probably Now TV, I think, is where most of the stuff comes to.
Yeah, that's where the Snyder Cut went, wasn't it? Yeah. So look, I mean, I kind of think the two DC movies, and I might need to be refreshed on what's what, but the two DC movies I enjoyed the most were probably this and the film of Shazam. You liked Shazam, didn't you?
Yeah. And do you know what as well? Because I know I've been picking this apart. I still enjoyed it. I don't want to make out like I hated the experience. And as you say, compared to a lot of the DC stuff, this is way more enjoyable. So I would say it's a solid mid to upper tier part of that pack, and I agree with you. I sort of think it shares a certain the humour side of it certainly shares with Shazam, and I'm a big fan of that film.
Yeah, and they're things that I think it does show what we've been missing is the versatility of the DC universe, and because Shazam is very funny, but it's aimed more squarely at children, and it's funny and it's a bit more family orientated, whereas this is aimed at adults very much. And I've seen a lot of discussion. I've said this before and I'll say it again, and I think I will go into bat for the BBFC. It's I've studied the BBFC when I was in school. I find it interesting. There's a whole debate around censorship, but the BBFC are very good, I've always felt, at putting things in context. And there have been parents going like, how the fuck is this a 15? Because it's got loads of swear, it's got boobs in it, it's got so much blood and guts. However,
Willie.
And Willie, yeah. It's like and Willie. It's
and Willie
all with James Gunn's. It's all in the context of a very cartoony, funny thing, so it's not menacing. You know what I mean? Yeah. I would sooner probably show this to a fucking kid than Batman versus Superman. You know what I mean?
Totally, yeah.
So, and the only thing that kind of springs to mind immediately, because you and I would never have been able to see something like this, a 15 rating, when we were kids, except for whatever reason, Starship Troopers was a 15 in the cinema, and then it got upgraded to 18 on home release, for whatever reason. Because the BBC are good at taking things in context, and I think taken in context, there's very little menace. There's no kind of, it's not scary, and it's blood and guts flying everywhere and swearing and stuff, but it's not kind of evil. You know, so I do think the 15 rate is justified through the lens of how we view things today.
It's like Paul Verhoeven said about that extended version of RoboCop, right? It was like that they made it worse by cutting.
Yes.
Because it was like the point of lingering on all that blood and guts was to make it funny.
Because it's so absurd.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
The Mr. Kenny scene is so absurd because he gets shot so many times. It passes that Rubicon and becomes funny. And then when you cut it down, it's worse because then your mind fills in the blanks.
Exactly. So I think this is squarely in that camp, you know. Of like, it's the sort of the gore is horrifically realistic. You know, like this shark guy ripping a soldier in half and everything, and his guts still hacking entrails from. It's disgusting, but it's like that's the point. You know, it's supposed to be like.
It's because the kind of alien, they had their kind of alien resurrection type moment, didn't they, in the lab? I liked the stuff about Capaldi's character being a pervert. I thought that's really funny lines. There's like, it's like either you help us, or you're going to find out what it's like. Do you want to help us, or do you want to find out what it's like to have 12 rats climb up your rectum? And he goes like, my answer to that, mate, surprise you. I was just like,
I did think that answer was a bit overwritten though. Because they could have said something like, "Is that a rhetorical question?" Or, or something like that. But instead,
he sells it so well, though.
The answer to that might surprise you because it won't be. What do you think? Or something. You know, it was just like a bit too overwritten. It didn't land for. His stuff didn't land for me. Which is really sad to say. And it's not his fault, and it's not. I think it's James Gunn's fault. I just think it was like he was the guy we had to get, and then it's all like, it was your guys all along. I mean, I thought again, the plot, the sort of driving stuff behind the plot was quite threadbare, and I just think, you know, for a story about some twats need to get up a tower and blow it up, some horribly inept twats need to get up a tower and blow it up. Why can't we do that? Why can't we because you know we have to keep stopping along the way. I mean, talking about, you know, like this is a Harley. You know, Harley Quinn feels like she has to almost. It's weird because the marketing campaign and everything seems to put most of it on Idris Elba's shoulders, as well it should, I think. But they cannot seem to get out from under this notion that it has to be yet another Harley Quinn film.
People, the thing is, you know, people love Harley Quinn.
Sells.
The Margot Robbie Harley Quinn, people fucking love.
It seems to sell, but it's like that isn't Harley Quinn. She just isn't Harley Quinn to me. I mean, she is that Harley Quinn, but she's not. Do you know what I mean? And Harley Quinn can be a malleable thing. I'm not saying it can't, and she can redefine it and everything, but. For me, you know, because she's barely really been around the Joker. Not that I've seen Birds of Prey, I must admit, but like,
I will discuss that very briefly.
Okay, but my thing with her as a character was always to represent that side of people. You know, I mean, she's a domestic abuse, she's worse than a domestic abuse victim. She's a mental abuse victim. And this sort of thing of addiction and having to go back to, you know, I mean, they do it so well in the animated series. Paul Dini, who created her in the animated series,
it's supposed to be done very well in this new grown-up Harley Quinn show as well, which I've not watched. People like that very, very much.
There's a show now.
There's a cartoon. Yeah, people say it's really great.
A cartoon. Right. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I hadn't seen that, but you know, and so she was always kind of, and she's not the female Joker. She's not a fighty woman. You know what I mean? Like like I say, they do make overtures. So it's weird, the bit where she sort of seems to suddenly fall in love and have sex with that guy, the president of Cordo Maltese, and then shoots him and then talks about red flags in boyfriends. Feels a bit hand wavy to me because you're hand waving. You're going, right, that's the sort of Joker relationship dealt with. She's no longer a domestic abuse victim. She obviously then gets abused physically by men in a torture scene and goes on a rampage. But it's like, yeah, you don't say anything with like. By the end of that, she's just done, and now she's a sort of super kick-ass fighty woman who occasionally we stop and she says something mad so that we remember that she's mad, and then we carry on. Mad. And it's like that's not Harley Quinn to me, and that's not the point of her. It's like she goes in these you know, she's tragic. She's I mean, and that's the animated version. And okay, if you're going to do something new with this one, and you're going to say, right, we're putting that to bed, and she's going to go off and do something else, that's fine. But I don't think they really did. Again, you could argue that those scenes are structured to say that, but I don't think they do. I don't think she really comes out of that and goes, I'm done.
I kind of was. I see what you say about Handwave. I wasn't quite sure what to make of that because her saying you're a red flag and this is toxic and I have to end it by murdering you kind of is the joke, right? The joke is that she's done something incredibly immoral and toxic herself, but it's in the framework of her. But I will also say, as you've done, it just kind of goes like, okay, that's done now. Off we go. And that's it. Yeah. And it's kind of I did like, so the Harley Quinn film, the Birds of Prey movie, is horribly plastic and empty. Like, it's not terrible, it's fine at best, but it does all these kind of little graphical flourishes of flowers and stuff. And the scene in this when she's gunning down those guys and all the flowers, that's really visually arresting and very nicely done. Yeah. And it's what the Harley Quinn film kind of really wished it was doing and kind of didn't. And it just felt so. The Harley Quinn movie, the Birds of Prey movie, felt so like a film made by a spreadsheet to sell cosplay outfits. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's kind of. It did not blow my skirt up, to use a Caseyism.
Well, that's a True Lies reference.
Oh, is it?
Charlton Heston, yeah. It's not blowing my skirt up,
gentlemen. How could I forget?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Don't you have any hard data?
Can we just watch True Lies? End of review. We're gonna go watch True Lies.
Yeah,
we're done. No more review. Yes, no. Hey, look, I'm not as moved by this version of Harley Quinn as most people seem to be. I think Margot Robbie's really great, but I'm not. People seem to be really blown away by how amazing she is, Harley Quinn, and well, not even that, but just the character in general. So I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Like, I mean, that's fine if you are. Please don't. I'm not saying you're wrong to feel that way. I'm just saying what she was, because we grew up in the 90s when the animated series came out and when that character was fresh and new. And I'm not saying that. She was in conception. Based around, needed the Joker as a sort of nucleus, if you like, in which to sort of orbit. But I'm not saying you can't divorce her from the Joker and make her her own thing. But I don't know that this is it. I don't know that I would choose this. But if that's what people like, and to me, it's just sort of a kick-ass female version of the Joker kind of thing. And it's like, well, that's
it was. I tell you what, it was nice not to see her kind of hypersexualized and in kind of slutty costumes and stuff.
Yes.
They put her in the ball ground, but they don't do that kind of, slutty trailer park gangster trash thing, which was just a bit skeezy.
Agreed.
And, I think it kind of takes a bit away from her as a character, and they've deliberately avoided that. And I think they chose to remove her facial tattoos for this as well. That was a conscious thing.
She's still got Daddy's little monster on her shoulder.
On a shoulder. Yeah. Do you know what? I think the portrayal's a bit better in that regard, which is good. And I'm not kind of as blown away as some people are. And also, do you know what? Huge credit to Margot Robbie, because she's massively made it her own. She's clearly really into it, and she's taken massive ownership over it, and that's great. It just doesn't necessarily blow our skirts up, gentlemen. So, I think there's lots of very visually arresting stuff in it as well. I mean, I thought it was a good time. I think the brand recognition has probably killed it, because loads of people I know have just been going like, why would I watch another one of those? And it's like, no, because it's got a writer director attached.
Yeah, well, it's got it's got all the same people in it. That's the problem, isn't it? It's like
but except it doesn't, but then it kind of does, because it kills off some of them. And
I guess it looks like it's Joel Kinnaman, Margot Robbie and Viola Davis. I guess when you look at that, you kind of go, well, that looks like the same thing.
And we won't be getting any more Joel Kinnaman. He was much better. He was much better in this. Bless him.
Yeah, he was.
Had loads more to do, and because he was just kind of like angry soldier guy before. And now they've made him just a little bit of a doofus, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I kind of liked everybody, but all the stuff with Polka Dot Man's mum and the kaiju mum,
that
was really funny.
That was all hilarious. Yeah.
So good. So all the kind of takes on that. You know what? I thought it was a breath of fresh air. I mean, we're getting the Peacemaker, the wheels in motion for the Peacemaker series, but I'm guessing. Well, actually, no. My presumption normally would be that we're not going to get another one of these. However, it's the pandemic, and this is going to go to streaming, and it might pull down huge streaming numbers. I think it's on paid streaming for a month in the States, and then they'll probably do something here. Right. And the model's changed, the market's changed, so we can't just look at things anymore and say that did badly this weekend.
Well, that's sort of. I mean, that's one thing that a certain type of film, I kind of think, well, isn't it advantageous to release now? Because you could at least lean on that and say, well, it didn't do as well.
Yes, if you're being strategic.
Yeah, you can't judge a space. I mean, that's now is when you should release Joss Whedon's The Justice League. No,
it'd be quite funny if they just sort of re-released it and went, oh yeah, that's good. Oh no, well, retroactively apply that to everything that
Snyder Cut comes out as a streaming exclusive, right? We're here on Now TV.
That only existed because of streaming.
Exactly, and you kind of go, like, oh, it's amazing, it's a masterpiece. It's like, you can say that all you want. You don't have to back it up with numbers, do you? Because no one's sort of...
you could just and it would seem that didn't even do that brilliantly. This is the problem. People on the internet think that people on the street think like people on the internet, and they don't. Internet voices are amplified, including ours. Internet voices are amplified, but they don't reflect the general public. And all your thoughts about this shit that just gets blown up, you have it fed to you all day long by Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or whatever. It's not what people on the street think. Most people on the street don't give a shit about what happened in fucking Action Comics 237. Most people on the street want something to do on a Friday night with their partner or their mum or their kids, and they're going to choose a movie based on the marketing they've seen. That's how most people act. They're not like us, internet friends. Well, look, this is it. This is the end of the review, I think. Is there anything more you want to add before we pop off?
I only to say, like I say, I enjoyed it, and I know I've sort of picked it to bits, but I enjoyed it, and I'm just not like I'm mad that it exists. I'm quite happy, for it to exist in the form it existed. The other one, I was clearly like, that was an egregious waste of my time.
Yeah, of course,
because it was an incomplete film. It just felt like it was taking the piss. Whereas this, I don't feel that way at all, and I'm happy.
It feels completely uncompromised, doesn't it?
The
other way,
and I think
you can't argue with that.
No, and I think that also has its problems, but at the same time, I sort of recognise that, hey, look, that's just me, and it's not the film's fault necessarily or anything. But so that's fine. But yeah, I sort of want stuff like this to do well as well, because I kind of think, well, I want people to take big swings at stuff,
Yes. Yeah,
and I feel like this is a big swing, and
it is a big swing. You can't argue with that, right? It's a singular vision that's been executed without interference, which is the absolute opposite of what we got before. So it feels like somebody's learned something somewhere. It's just hard to tell who and what.
Yes. Yeah. True. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Those are our thoughts on the James Gunn's and A Suicide Squad. Which is out now in cinemas and on streaming. I recommend it. Duncan kind of you liked it, but you're not bananas about it. I think that's the bottom line here.
I'm not, but I think people should still go and see it.
Go give it a look. See.
Yeah.
So we're back recording pre-recorded content after 18 months or so of streams every Thursday, but we're back pre-recording. If you are on Patreon, you heard this a full 48 hours before everybody on the broader interweb. You can find us on patreon.com/Val Verde Broadcasting. We're on YouTube, of course, Val Verde Broadcasting. Where else can you find us, Duncan?
You can also find this is a good question on the Twitter. Did you mention the Twitter?
I did not mention the Twitter.
Did not mention it. Very good. So we're on the Twitter, we're on the Patreon, we're on the YouTube. We are also soonish to be coming to podcasting platforms here, there, and indeed everywhere.
So thanks very much for tuning in. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, get down in the comments below please, and tell us what you thought of the Suicide Squad. You will find a lovely, warm and welcoming community in Val Verde Broadcasting. We do have one of the loveliest communities on the internet, small but dedicated and very sweet and kind, so go and join in and have a nice chat with those guys in the comments below. And all of our regulars whose names we see every week in the streams, we see you on our social, we see you on our Patreon, we see you on our comments. Welcome back, get stuck in, and we will see you next time for the next one of these. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Partia,